The great hall of the Galactic Council was silent. 300 alien species sat in their floating seats, all eyes focused on the figure standing at the center. Ambassador Kyle of the Vorthak Empire was shaking. His blue skin had turned pale, and his forearms trembled as he held the report. The Vorthaks were warriors. They had conquered 50 star systems in the last century. Their ships were the strongest in the galaxy. Their soldiers feared nothing. But today, Kale looked like a broken creature. "Tell us what happened," said Council Leader Vexana. Her voice echoed through the chamber. Kale took a deep breath. We attacked a human colony world, just a small farming planet called New Busan. Our intelligence said it had no defenses, no military bases, no weapons, just farmers and families. The council members leaned forward. Everyone knew about humans, but very few had actually seen them fight. "We sent our best strike force," Kyle continued. 300 ships, elite warriors, the finest weapons in our arsenal. We expected easy victory. "And?" Vexana prompted. "They destroyed us." Kyle's voice was barely a whisper. "Not damaged, not defeated, destroyed. Out of 300 ships, only 12 escaped. Out of 30,000 warriors, only a few hundred survived." Gasps filled the chamber. The Vorthak Empire had never suffered such a defeat. "How many human soldiers did they have?" asked Minister Yultok from the Kristen Republic. Kale's hands shook harder. "That's just it. There were no soldiers, just farmers, ordinary colonists. Maybe 2,000 of them total. Men, women, even children helped in the defense." The silence that followed was deafening. "Impossible," said General Nexvar of the Titan Federation. "Our records show humans use primitive weapons, kinetic projectiles, chemical explosives. How? Could farmers defeat your strike force?" Kyle activated a holographic display. The images that appeared made several council members gasp in horror. Massive Vorthak war machines lay twisted and broken. Ships that could level mountains had been torn apart. Bodies of elite warriors were scattered across fields of crops. "They took our weapons," Kyle said. "Somehow, impossibly, they figured out how to use them better than we do. A human farmer took my personal battlesuit and used it to destroy 6 of our tanks. A human child, maybe 10 years old, reprogrammed our attack drones and turned them against us." "Show them the recording of." "The farmer," said Admiral Crixton, Kale's military advisor. The hologram changed. It showed a human male, maybe 40 years old, wearing simple farm clothes. He was standing next to a Vorthak heavy assault mech. The machine was 30 feet tall and weighed 400 tons. It required years of training to operate. The human climbed inside. Within minutes, he was moving the mech like he had been born in it. But he wasn't just operating it normally. He was making it do things the designers said were impossible. The mech jumped 50 feet in the air. It moved with the grace of a dancer while firing weapons with perfect accuracy. "That human had never seen our technology before," Kyle said. "Yet in minutes he was using it better than our best pilots." Council Leader Vexana stood up. Her ancient face was troubled. "Show them the archives," she said to her aide. A new hologram appeared. It was old, very old. The image quality was poor, but the message was clear. It showed the same symbol over and over, a yellow star with 9 planets around it, Earth's solar system. "This is from our oldest records," Vexana said. 500 years ago, the Galactic Council made one law that has never been changed, never been questioned. Human space is off limits. No military action, no invasion, no conquest, no exceptions. "Why?" asked Minister Yultok. Because of what happened to the Hegemony Empire, Vexana replied. Every being in the chamber knew that name. The Hegemony had ruled half the galaxy before humans ever left their home world. They had millions of ships, trillions of soldiers, technology that seemed like magic. They tried to conquer Earth, Vexana continued. The humans had barely reached their own moon. They had no energy weapons, no shields, no faster-than-light travel. The Hegemony expected easy victory. What happened? General Nexvar asked, though his voice suggested he didn't want to know. The humans won. Not just survived. Won. Completely. The entire Hegemony Empire collapsed in less than one standard year. Millions of ships destroyed. Their homeworlds surrendered without firing a shot. All because 50,000 humans in primitive spacecraft did the impossible. The chamber erupted in whispers and arguments. Several species demanded proof. Others claimed the story was impossible. Vexana raised her hand for silence. The records are sealed, but they exist. The survivors of that war all agreed on one thing. Humans are not like other species. They don't follow the same rules. Physics, biology, logic. None of it applies to them the way it should. Meanwhile, on the colony world of New Busan, Hyun Woo, Kim was fixing his irrigation system. He didn't know that the galaxy's most powerful beings were discussing his people in fear. He was just a farmer trying to grow enough food to feed his family. His daughter, so young, ran up to him, covered in mud but smiling. She was 12 years old and loved helping on the farm. "Dad, the irrigation pipes in Sector 7 are broken again," she said. Hyunwoo nodded. "I'll fix them after lunch. Did you finish your exercises with the other children?" So Young grinned. "Yes. Today we practiced vehicle operation and tactical coordination. Jinwoo figured out how to make the practice mechs do that spinning jump. Move. It was amazing." To Hyunwoo, this sounded like normal children playing games. He didn't realize that what the children called exercises would be considered advanced military training by any other species. The practice mechs were captured alien war machines that the adults let the children play with to keep them entertained. "Good," Hyunwoo said. "Education is important. Even if we live out here on the frontier, we need to make sure you children learn everything you need to know." In the Great Council chamber, Ambassador Kale was finishing his report. "The humans didn't pursue us when we retreated. They didn't demand surrender or payment. They just let us go. When we sent a message asking why they spared us, their response was simple. You learned your lesson. Don't come back." "And you won't?" asked Vexana. Kyle's 4 arms shook. "Never. The off-limits law exists for a reason. Humans aren't just dangerous to attack. They're impossible to defeat. Whatever made them this way, whatever force shaped their evolution, it created something that doesn't belong in our understanding of the universe." The council session ended with a renewed confirmation of the ancient law. Human space would remain off-limits, not because the council feared humans would conquer the galaxy, but because they had already proven they could, and chose not to. New Busan, Hyun-woo finished fixing the irrigation system and called his daughter for lunch. Neither of them knew that their simple existence had just reminded the galaxy why humans were the most feared species among the stars. Dr. Raxus adjusted his research equipment one more time. The young Altarian scientist had spent 3 years planning this mission. His people were known for their curiosity and intelligence, and Raxus was no different. He wanted to study humans, despite every warning he had received. "Sir, we're approaching the edge of human space," said Navigator Velix from the bridge of their research ship. The stellar inquiry. Should we stop here? No, Raxus replied firmly. We're going to observe them from a safe distance. The Council's stories about humans can't possibly be true. They're just another species. Biology has rules, and no species can break them. Security Chief Thornan, a massive creature with thick armor plating, laughed. The young doctor thinks he knows better than 500 years of galactic law. This should be interesting. Their ship was small but advanced, designed for stealth research. It could observe a planet from millions of miles away without being detected. Or so they thought. On Earth, marine biologist Jin Ah Park was 3 miles, underwater in the Pacific Ocean. She wore a simple diving suit that her people had used for decades. To her, this was just another day of research. She was studying deep-sea creatures that live near volcanic vents. The water pressure at this depth would crush any other known species instantly. The heat from the volcanic vents would cook their flesh in seconds. But Jenna swam through the dangerous environment like it was a swimming pool. Water temperature is holding steady at 400 degrees, she said into her communicator. The pressure is about 300 times normal atmosphere. Perfect conditions for today's research. Her research partner, Taeho Choi, was working on the surface ship above. He was monitoring her vital signs and helping coordinate the mission. Suddenly, his instrument started showing strange readings. Jin, I'm getting some weird electromagnetic signals, Taeho said. Probably just solar activity, but keep an eye out for anything unusual. What Taeho couldn't know was that the signals were coming from the stellar inquiry, which was scanning Earth with every sensor they had. On the alien research ship, Dr. Raxus stared at his instruments in confusion. This can't be right. According to our sensors, there's a human swimming at depths that should be impossible for any organic creature to survive. Maybe your equipment is broken, suggested Velix. Run a full diagnostic, Raxus ordered. Minutes later, the results came back. Everything was working perfectly. Focus sensors on the human, Raxus said. I want to see exactly what's happening. The main screen showed Jinnah swimming near the volcanic vents. She was collecting samples of strange creatures and taking measurements. But what amazed the aliens was how she moved. She swam faster than their ship could move underwater. She lifted rocks that weighed several tons like they were pebbles. That's impossible, whispered Thornan. Our strongest warriors couldn't survive those conditions for 5 seconds. Meanwhile, on the surface, Taeho was having his own impossible moment. The research ship's main engine had broken down, and they were drifting toward dangerous rocks. The engine weighed 12 tons and required special equipment to move. Taeho walked over to the engine compartment, grabbed the massive engine block with his bare hands, and lifted it out of place. He then grabbed a spare engine from storage and installed it by himself. The entire repair took him 20 minutes. Engines fixed, he radioed to Jinnah. You can continue your research. On the stellar inquiry, the aliens watched this in complete silence. Their species required teams of dozens with mechanical assistants to move engines that size. Taeho had done it alone by hand while making it look easy. Run a bioscan on both humans, Raxus ordered, his voice shaking. The results made no sense. Human muscle density was impossible. Their bone structure defied physics. Their brain activity showed patterns that violated everything science knew about consciousness. They're using less than 1% of their muscle capacity, reported the ship's computer. Current estimates suggest full capacity would allow the male human to lift approximately 400 tons. That's more than our heavy construction mechs can handle, Velix said weakly. And the female human, the computer continued, is processing sensory data at a rate that exceeds our fastest quantum computers. She's simultaneously analyzing water chemistry, tracking the movement of hundreds of sea creatures, mapping underwater, terrain, and maintaining perfect physical coordination. Dr. Raxus felt his world view crumbling. What about their technology? Surely their equipment is what makes this possible. The computer analyzed Jinnah's diving suit. The equipment appears to be primitive by galactic standards. Basic materials, simple design, no energy shields or life support systems. The human is surviving those conditions through biological adaptation alone. 3 hours later, Jinnah surfaced with her samples. She climbed onto the research ship like she had just been swimming in a calm lake. She wasn't tired, wasn't injured, wasn't even breathing hard. "Great diving today," she told Taeho. "I found some amazing specimens. Look at this one." She held up a creature that was glowing with intense radiation. Any other species would have died just from touching it. Jinnah was studying it with her bare hands. "Fascinating," Taeho said, leaning in close. "The radiation levels must be incredible. Good thing our immune systems can handle this kind of exposure." On the alien ship, alarms started going off. "Radiation warning!" shouted Velix. "Those humans are holding enough radioactive material to poison an entire planet." "And they're completely unaffected," Raxus said quietly. "They don't even realize how dangerous it is." As if to prove his point, Jinnah carefully placed the radioactive creature in a simple glass container and put it with her other samples. She then ate lunch while sitting next to materials that would kill most aliens from a mile away. "Sir," Thornan said carefully, "maybe we should leave. If the humans detect us—" "They can't possibly detect us," Raxus replied. "Our stealth technology is perfect. We're completely invisible to their primitive sensors." At that exact moment, Taeho looked up at the sky and pointed directly at their ship. "Jinnah, do you see that? There's something up there. It's trying to hide, but it's not very good at it." Jinnah followed his gaze. "Oh yes, I see it. Looks like some kind of research vessel. They've been watching us for about 4 hours now. Should we say hello?" The aliens' stealth systems were the most advanced in the galaxy. No known technology could detect them. Yet 2 humans had spotted them instantly. "How?" Raxus whispered. "Perhaps," suggested the ship's computer. "Human senses operate beyond the normal electromagnetic spectrum. Our stealth technology may be invisible to conventional sensors, but not to human perception." Taeho was now waving at their ship. "They seem friendly," he called to Jinnah. "Maybe they're other researchers? Should we invite them down for lunch?" Jinnah asked. "We have plenty of food." On the alien ship, panic was setting in. "They're treating us like we're neighbors stopping by for a visit," Velix said. "They have no fear at all." "Because they have no reason to fear," Raxus realized. "Look at what we've observed. They operate in environments that would kill us. They lift weights that would crush us. They detect technology that should be impossible to see. They handle materials that would poison us. To them, we're probably no more threatening than insects." The truth was sinking in. The galactic warnings about humans weren't exaggerations. They were understatements. Humans didn't follow the rules of biology, physics, or common sense. They were impossible creatures living impossible lives, and they didn't even realize how impossible they were. "Set. Course for home," Raxus ordered quietly. "We've learned enough." "What did we learn?" asked Thornan. "That the Council was right," Raxus replied. "Humans should be off limits. Not because they're dangerous to approach, but because understanding them is dangerous to our sanity." As the stellar inquiry retreated from human space, Jinnah and Tai Ho finished their lunch and returned to work. They never knew that 3 aliens had just had their understanding of the universe completely shattered by watching them do simple research tasks. For humans, it had been just another ordinary day. Dr. Raxus couldn't sleep. 3 days had passed since his research team had observed the humans on Earth, and he couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen. Against all advice from his crew, he had made a decision that would change everything. "Sir, you can't be serious," Navigator Velix said as he watched Raxus prepare a communication array. "First contact with humans, the Council will exile us if they find out." "The Council is wrong," Raxus replied. "Humans aren't monsters. They're just different. If we approach them peacefully, maybe we can learn something that will benefit all species." Security Chief Thornan shook his massive head. "This is madness. We should return home and report what we observed." But Raxus had already made up his mind. He activated the long-range communicator and began broadcasting on standard galactic frequencies. His message was simple. "Unknown vessels in this sector. This is the research ship Stellar Inquiry. We require assistance." It wasn't entirely a lie. During their hasty retreat from Earth, their ship had suffered damage from a small asteroid impact. To most species, it would be minor damage. To the Altarians, whose technology was delicate and precise, it was potentially fatal. 12 hours. Later, they received a response. "Stellar Inquiry, this is Captain Woo Jin Lee of the United Earthship Harmony. We received your distress signal. What is your situation?" The voice was calm, professional, and spoke perfect galactic standard language. Raxus was surprised. Most species took years to learn the complex grammar and pronunciation. "Captain Lee, our quantum drive has been damaged. We're unable to repair it with our current resources. Can you provide assistance?" There was a pause. Then Captain Lee responded, "We're sending a repair team to your location. Please prepare for boarding. Our people will fix whatever needs fixing." Velix grabbed Raxus by the arm. "They're coming aboard? Sir, we need to leave, now." "Calm down," Raxus said. "They're offering to help, that's all." An hour later, a small human shuttle approached the Stellar Inquiry. The aliens watched nervously as it docked with their ship. The airlock opened, and 3 humans stepped aboard. Captain Woo Jin Lee was a tall man with kind eyes and a confident presence. Behind him came Engineer Minho Song, a younger man carrying a simple toolbox, and Medical Officer Yunji Seo, a woman with a gentle smile. "Dr. Raxus, I presume?" Captain Lee said, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture. "Pleasure to meet you. These are my colleagues, Minho and Yunji. Don't worry, we'll have you back on your way in no time." Raxus shook the human's hand, surprised by the warmth and strength of the grip. "Thank you, Captain. I should warn you, our quantum drive technology is quite complex. It might take your people some time to understand it." Minho Song laughed. "Don't worry about that. I love puzzles." The engineer walked over to the damaged quantum drive and started examining it. The drive was a masterpiece of Altarian engineering, using principles that took their best scientists decades to understand. Minho looked at it for about 30 seconds, then opened his toolbox. "I see the problem," he said casually. "Your quantum field generator is out of alignment, and the particle accelerator has a microfracture in the containment chamber. Easy fix." Velix stared at him in shock. That's impossible. It took our engineers 6 months to diagnose a similar problem. Last year, Minho was already working, using tools that looked primitive compared to Altarian equipment. He pulled out what appeared to be a simple metal wrench and began adjusting components that required precision measured in fractions of atoms. "Your containment system is really elegant," Minho said as he worked. "I can see why you designed it this way. Very efficient. Although, if you moved this component here and adjusted the field harmonics like this..." As he spoke, he made small modifications to the drive system. The aliens watched in growing amazement as their engine began running better than it ever had before. "There we go," Minho said, closing his toolbox. "Good as new. Actually, better than new. You should get about 15% better fuel efficiency now." The entire repair had taken him 20 minutes. Meanwhile, Medical Officer Yunji, CO, had been chatting with Security Chief Thornan, who had mentioned feeling unwell recently. Without asking permission, she had run a quick medical scan with a small device from her kit. "You have a mineral deficiency," she told Thornan. "Your species needs more cobalt in your diet. It's affecting your immune system." "How could you possibly know that?" Thornan asked. "You've never seen my species before." Yunji smiled. "Biochemistry follows predictable patterns. Your cellular structure is similar to the Kandorian species from the Outer Rim, just with different mineral requirements. Here, take this." She handed him a small pill she had just synthesized using portable equipment. "Take one of these every day for a week. You'll feel much better." Thornan looked at the pill suspiciously. "How do I know this won't poison me?" "Because I just designed it specifically for your biochemistry," Yunji replied. "I've analyzed your metabolic requirements and created a supplement that will balance your mineral levels perfectly." She had done this in less than 5 minutes, using equipment that looked like toys compared to standard galactic medical technology. Captain Lee had been talking with Dr. Raxus about their research mission. "So you're studying different species across the galaxy? That's fascinating work. If you ever want to visit Earth, you're welcome anytime. We love meeting new people." "You're not concerned about us?" Raxus asked carefully. "Most species prefer to maintain distance from others." "Why would we be concerned?" Captain Lee replied. "You seem like good people. You're researchers, you're peaceful, and you asked for help when you needed it. That's all we need to know." The simple trust and openness in the human's voice was shocking. To Raxus. Most first contact situations involved complex negotiations, security protocols, and careful diplomatic exchanges. The humans were treating them like old friends. "Captain," Velix said nervously, "perhaps we should discuss formal diplomatic protocols." "Oh, don't worry about all that bureaucratic stuff," Captain Lee said with a wave of his hand. "If your governments want to exchange ambassadors and sign treaties, that's fine. But people are people, you know. We're all just trying to get by in the universe." Minho finished his work and packed up his tools. "All done. Your quantum drive should run perfectly now. I also fixed a few other small issues I noticed. Your navigation computer had some software bugs, and your life support system wasn't running at optimal efficiency." "You fixed our navigation computer?" Velix asked weakly. "But you don't know our programming languages." "Programming is programming," Minho shrugged. "Logic is universal. Your code just needed some optimization." As the humans prepared to leave, Dr. Raxus felt compelled to ask the question that had been troubling him. "Captain Lee, may I ask you something? Your people, you're remarkably capable. Your engineer just repaired and improved our most advanced technology in minutes. Your medical officer diagnosed and treated a condition she'd never seen before. You learned our language perfectly. How is this possible? Captain Lee looked genuinely puzzled by the question. I'm not sure what you mean. Minho is good with machines. Yunji is a great doctor. And languages aren't that hard to learn if you pay attention. We're just doing our jobs. But the speed, the intuitive understanding... Oh, that, Captain Lee smiled. I guess humans are pretty good at figuring things out. We've had to be, you know. Life throws problems at you, and you either solve them or they solve you. As the humans returned to their ship, the aliens sat in stunned silence. Their quantum drive was running better than ever. Thornin already felt healthier after taking Yunji's medicine. Their computer systems were operating with incredible efficiency. They didn't just help us, Raxus said quietly. They improved everything they touched, in minutes, without breaking a sweat. And they acted like it was completely normal, Velix added. Because to them, it is normal, Raxus realized. This is just what humans do. They see a problem, they fix it, they make it better. They don't even think about how impossible it should be. 3 hours later, as the Stellar Inquiry prepared to enter hyperspace with their newly improved systems, Dr. Raxus made another decision. Set course for Nexus Prime Station, he told Velix. The Galactic Council headquarters? Sir, they'll want to know why we were in human space. Then we'll tell them the truth, Raxus replied. That the humans aren't dangerous because they want to hurt anyone. They're dangerous because they're so good at helping that they break every rule of science in the process. As they jumped to hyperspace, none of them noticed the small tracking device that Minho had quietly attached to their hull. Not for spying, but so the humans could find them again if they ever needed more help, because that's what humans did. They helped. Dr. Raxus stood before the Galactic Archive Council on Nexus Prime Station. The massive chamber was filled with the galaxy's greatest historians, scientists, and keepers of knowledge. He had requested access to the sealed records about the first human-alien contact, and after 3 days of debate they had agreed to show him. The records you're about to see, said Archive Keeper Zulneth, are restricted for good reason. They document the fall of the Hegemony Empire, the greatest civilization our galaxy had ever known. The lights dimmed, and ancient holographic recordings began to play. The images were 500 years old, but the quality was still clear enough to see details. This is the Hegemony fleet, Zulneth narrated. 10,000 ships, each one larger than most space stations. They controlled half the galaxy and had never lost a single battle. The hologram showed massive vessels moving through space in perfect formation. Each ship bristled with weapons that could destroy planets. The fleet was so large it blocked out the stars behind it. And this, Zulneth continued, is what they went to conquer. The image shifted to show a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. Earth looked peaceful and defenseless from space. A few primitive satellites orbited the world, and there were signs of early industrial development on the surface. The humans had barely reached their own moon, Zulneth explained. They had no faster-than-light travel, no energy weapons, no shields. Their most advanced spacecraft were chemical rockets that could barely escape their own gravity. Admiral Krextar of the Hegemony appeared in the recording. He was a massive creature with thick armor and glowing red eyes. His species, the Nexarians, were the military backbone of the Empire. This will be a simple conquest, Krextar said to his officers. The planet has some industrial capacity, so we'll enslave the population and put them to work. Estimated time for complete subjugation, 6 hours. The recording showed the Hegemony fleet approaching Earth. Warning messages were broadcast in hundreds of languages, demanding immediate surrender. The human response was broadcast on primitive radio waves. Calm male voice spoke in what the translator identified as English. "This is Commander Jae-sung Kim of Earth Defense Command. You are not welcome in our system. Leave immediately, or we will defend ourselves." The hegemony officers laughed. Admiral Krextar himself appeared amused. "Did they just threaten us? With what? Their chemical rockets?" "Sir," reported a hegemony. "Sensor officer, we're detecting 50 small craft launching from the planet. They appear to be converted civilian vessels, cargo ships, mining equipment, even what looks like passenger shuttles." 50 ships against 10,000, Krextar mused. "The humans are either very brave or very stupid." What happened next changed galactic history forever. The human ships didn't attack conventionally. Instead, they did things that should have been impossible. Commander Jae-sung Kim's converted cargo hauler somehow appeared behind the hegemony flagship without using any detectable propulsion system. "How did they get there?" Krextar demanded. "Unknown, sir. Our sensors show no hyperspace signature, no sublight movement. They just appeared. The human ship fired mining charges, simple chemical explosives designed for breaking up asteroids. But somehow, those primitive weapons penetrated shields that could withstand antimatter bombardment. The hegemony flagship's main engines exploded. Across the battlefield, similar impossible events were happening. Navigation Officer Subin Kang of the human vessel Sejong calculated hyperspace jumps in her head, directing her ship through dimensions that required massive computers to navigate. She appeared inside hegemony formations and disabled entire squadrons before they could react. Weapons specialist Dong Hyun Yu had taken mining equipment and somehow turned it into weapons that ignored every known law of physics. His particle beam meant for cutting rocks sliced through hegemony armor like it was paper. "This is impossible!" Admiral Krextar screamed as another 100 ships fell to the human attack. "Our shields are perfect. Our armor is impenetrable." Communications Officer Ye-Jin Han was performing perhaps the most impossible feat of all. She was learning the hegemony's military codes in real time during the battle. Within an hour, she was not only speaking perfect Nexarian, but she had figured out their military structure, tactical doctrines, and command protocols. "Admiral Krextar," her voice came over the hegemony communication system. "This is Ye-Jin Han of Earth Defense. We don't want to destroy you, but we will if you don't leave. Your fleet is brave, but you're not equipped to fight us." "Not equipped?" Krextar raged. "We have the most advanced technology in the galaxy." "You have very impressive tools," Ye-Jin replied calmly. "But tools are only as good as the people using them. And frankly, you're not very creative with them." As if to prove her point, engineering specialist Min-Woo Park had just figured out how to turn a hegemony ship's own shields against it. He broadcast a simple signal that caused the enemy's defensive systems to create a feedback loop, destroying the ship from the inside. "How are they doing this?" demanded the hegemony science officer. "I don't know," came the panicked reply. "Their tactics don't follow any known strategic doctrine. They're using our own technology better than we are. They're adapting faster than our computers can process." The battle raged for 6 hours, exactly the time Admiral Krextar had predicted it would take to conquer Earth. But instead of human surrender, it ended with the destruction of 9,847 hegemony ships. Only 153 vessels escaped to tell the tale. But the most shocking part came after the battle. Commander Jae-sung Kim opened a communication channel to the surviving hegemony ships. "Admiral Krextar, Are you still alive? Yes, came the weak reply from the battered flagship. Good. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go home and tell your empire that Earth is off limits. We don't want to conquer anyone. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to be left alone. Can you do that? You're letting us go? Of course. What would we gain by destroying you? You've learned your lesson. That's enough. Dr. Raxus paused the recording. They just let them go? After winning the most decisive victory in galactic history? Archive Keeper Zulneth nodded. The humans showed no interest in conquest. They didn't demand tribute, didn't claim territory, didn't even ask for reparations. They just wanted to be left alone. What happened to the hegemony empire? It collapsed within the year, Zulneth replied. Not because of military action, but because word spread about what had happened. If 50 human ships could destroy 10,000 hegemony vessels, what could 1,000,000 human ships do? Every subject world of the empire declared independence. The hegemony's own allies abandoned them. Their entire civilization crumbled because everyone realized they weren't invincible anymore. The recording continued. It showed the aftermath of the battle from the human perspective. The 50 Earth ships returned home like they had just completed a routine training exercise. Commander Jae-sung Kim was seen talking to his crew. Good work, everyone. Navigation, excellent jumping today. Weapons, nice improvisation with the mining charges. Communications, outstanding work on the language analysis. Engineering, I loved what you did with their shield systems. The crew responded with casual acknowledgments, like they had just finished a difficult but ordinary day at work. They acted like it was normal, Dr. Raxus observed. Because to them, it was, Zulneth replied. The humans didn't see themselves as performing miracles. They were just solving problems with the tools available. But how? How did they do things that our best scientists say are impossible? Zulneth activated another recording. This one showed human children on Earth, playing in schoolyards. But their games looked like advanced military training to alien eyes. Children were calculating complex mathematical equations for fun, building machines from scrap materials and learning languages just by hearing them spoken. We sent spy satellites to observe Earth after the battle, Zulneth explained. What we discovered was that every human possesses capabilities that would make them superhuman by galactic standards. They just think of it as normal. The recording showed a human child, maybe 8 years old, fixing a broken computer by taking it apart and rebuilding it in a completely different configuration. Another child was speaking 6 different languages while helping translate for a group of human diplomats. Their education system doesn't teach them that things are impossible, Zulneth continued, so they don't know they can't do impossible things. Dr. Raxus watched in silence as the recordings showed more examples. Human farmers growing crops in impossible conditions. Human engineers building machines that violated known scientific principles. Human doctors curing diseases that had no known treatment. This is why the off-limits law exists, Zulneth said finally. Not because humans are aggressive or expansionist, but because they represent something our understanding of the universe cannot contain. They break rules we thought were absolute, and they don't even realize it. Dr. Raxus added quietly. No. To them, the impossible is just another problem to solve. The archive session ended, but Dr. Raxus remained in his seat, staring at the empty space where the holograms had been. He now understood why the galaxy feared humanity. It wasn't their weapons or their ships or the message spread through the galaxy's underground networks like wildfire. Dr. Raxus had shared his encounter with humans, and now several species wanted to test them secretly. They couldn't accept that one species could be so impossibly capable. The crystalline collective was the first to act. These beings existed as pure mental energy, housed in crystal bodies. They had conquered hundreds of worlds through psychic domination alone. Their leader, Prime Crystal Nalthor, decided to test human mental defenses. Their minds cannot be that different from other organic species, Nalthor declared to his subordinates. We will probe their thoughts, control their actions, and prove that they are just another primitive race with good luck. The target was New Sol, a human mining colony on the edge of known space. The colony had about 10,000 residents, mostly families who had come to mine rare metals from the planet's core. Among them was Kyung-Soo An, who ran a small trading post that supplied equipment to the miners. He was an ordinary man with a wife and 2 children, and he had never been in a real fight in his life. Also, in the colony was Narration, who taught at the local school. She specialized in early childhood education and spent her days helping 6-year-olds learn to read and write. She was gentle, patient, and completely nonviolent. Neither of them knew that the most powerful psychic species in the galaxy was about to attack their minds. The crystalline collective approached New Sol in stealth mode, their crystal ships invisible to normal sensors. Nalthor focused his mental powers on the colony and began his assault. Beginning psychic penetration, he announced. Target, the human merchants and teachers. They should be easy to control. The psychic wave hit the colony like an invisible tsunami. On most worlds, every living being would have immediately fallen under crystalline control. Their minds would have been overwhelmed, their free will destroyed. Instead, something unexpected happened. Kyung-Soo An was checking inventory in his shop when the attack began. Suddenly, he felt a strange presence trying to enter his thoughts. But instead of being overwhelmed, he found himself mentally pushing back. That's interesting, he said to himself. Someone's trying to get inside my head. That's not very polite. Without any training or preparation, Kyung-Soo began blocking the psychic attack, but he didn't do it alone. Somehow, impossibly, he found his mind connecting with others in the colony. Nara Shin felt the connection form while she was teaching her class. One moment she was helping children with their math problems. The next, she was part of a vast mental network that included every human in the colony. Children, we have visitors, she told her students calmly. Some crystal beings are trying to play games with our minds. Should we show them how good humans are at mental games? The 6-year-olds giggled and nodded. To them, this was just another learning exercise. On the crystalline ship, alarms were going off. What's happening? Nalthor demanded. Sir, the humans aren't being controlled, reported Subcrystal Vexilin. Instead, they're connecting to each other, creating some kind of collective consciousness. That's impossible. Organic minds can't form hive networks. Sir, they're not just forming a network. They're using it to counterattack. Nalthor felt it then. 10,000 human minds working together as one, pushing back against his psychic assault. But it wasn't just defense. The humans were learning his attack patterns, analyzing his mental structure, figuring out how psychic powers worked. Within minutes, little Nara Shin's students were giggling as they played with psychic energy like it was finger paint. They were creating mental constructs, sending messages through pure thought, and doing things that should have taken decades of training. Teacher, look, called out 6-year-old Min Jun. I can make the crystal people's thoughts all twisty. Very good, Minjun, Nara replied encouragingly. Remember to be gentle. We don't want to hurt them, just teach them that humans prefer privacy. Meanwhile, Kyung-Soo had figured out how to trace the psychic attack back to its source. His merchants, mind, trained to track supply chains and logistics, easily followed the mental pathways back to the crystalline ship. Found them, he announced to the mental network. 3 ships about 2 million kilometers out. They're using crystalline matrices to focus their psychic energy. Pretty clever design, actually. Without any formal coordination, the humans began dismantling the crystalline attack. Not through brute force, but through understanding. They figured out how psychic powers worked, then used that knowledge better than the aliens who had spent millennia perfecting it. On the alien ship, chaos reigned. "They've broken our mental shields," Vexilin reported in panic. "They're inside our consciousness." Impossible. No organic mind can penetrate our defenses. But the humans weren't just penetrating their defenses, they were rewriting them. 6-year-old children who had learned about psychic powers 5 minutes ago were teaching centuries-old crystal beings new techniques. "Hello there," came Nara Shin's gentle voice inside Nalthor's mind. "I'm Nara. I teach children on New Soul. I think there's been a misunderstanding." You're in my head," Nalthor stammered. "Yes, sorry about that. You started it, though. We humans don't like people poking around in our minds without permission. It's considered very rude." "How are you doing this? Your species has no psychic abilities." "We didn't until about 10 minutes ago," Nara replied cheerfully. "But humans are pretty good at learning new things. Your attack taught us how psychic powers work. It's actually quite simple once you understand the basic principles." Across the galaxy, other species were conducting their own tests. The Void Hunters, masters of stealth technology, decided to spy on the human military base, Fort Hanyang. Their ships could become completely invisible, not just to sensors, but to reality itself. They existed in a dimensional pocket that made them undetectable to any known technology. Soldiers Byung-Ho Kang and Sae Rom were on patrol duty when the Void Hunters arrived. They were ordinary Marines, trained for basic security work on a peaceful frontier base. "Something's not right," Byung-Ho said suddenly, stopping in the middle of their patrol route. "What do you mean?" Sae-Rom asked. "I don't know. There's something empty over there, like space that isn't supposed to be empty." Sae-Rom followed his gaze. To any other species, there would be nothing to see. The Void Hunters' stealth technology was perfect, but somehow the 2 humans could sense the absence of something that should be there. "Yeah, I feel it too," Sae-Rom agreed. "It's like there's a hole in the air." Without any training in dimensional physics, the 2 Marines began walking toward the invisible ships. The Void Hunters watched in growing alarm as the humans approached their supposedly undetectable vessels. "How are they doing that?" whispered Hunter Captain Zelmoth. "Unknown," replied his science officer. "Our stealth systems are operating perfectly. We exist outside normal space-time. They shouldn't be able to perceive us at all." Byung-Ho stopped directly in front of the lead ship and raised his voice. "We know you're there. You might as well come out and talk." "This is impossible," Zelmoth said. "Phase us back into normal space." As the Void Hunter ships became visible, Sae-Rom nodded in satisfaction. "Much better. Now we can see you properly. Are you here for a friendly visit? Or should we call this in as a security threat?" Meanwhile, the Bio Collective was conducting their own experiment. These aliens were master geneticists who could analyze and modify any form of life. They had obtained samples of human DNA from the Stellar Inquiry's encounter and brought them to their best laboratory. Chief Researcher Yixlak began the analysis, expecting to find normal organic genetic code. Instead, he discovered something that defied all understanding of biology. "This can't be right," he muttered, running the analysis again. "Run it a third time." His assistant, Sub-Researcher Polnex, checked the results. "Sir, the readings are consistent. Human DNA contains genetic sequences that shouldn't exist." "What do you mean?" "They have active genes for surviving in vacuum, breathing methane, processing radiation, adapting to gravity variations from 0.1 to 50 standard units, and dozens of other environmental conditions. But according to our research, humans evolved on a single planet with very specific conditions." Yixlak studied the data more carefully. "These genetic markers, they're like evolutionary responses to threats that don't exist in their native environment. It's as if their DNA was designed to handle situations they've never encountered. More than that, sir. Look at this neural pathway encoding. Their brains are structured to process sensory data that their planet doesn't produce. They have genetic instructions for abilities they shouldn't need." The Biocollective's discovery was perhaps the most disturbing of all. Humans weren't just impossibly capable. They were genetically prepared for impossibilities they had never faced. Back on New Sol, the psychic confrontation was ending peacefully. The Crystalline Collective had discovered that humans could not only match their mental powers, but exceed them within minutes of first exposure. "We surrender," Nalthor announced formally through the mental link. "We acknowledge human mental superiority." And Dr. Raxus thought he was going crazy. The reports coming from across the galaxy made no sense. Humans had somehow developed psychic powers in minutes. They could detect invisible ships. Their DNA contained impossible genetic sequences. Nothing about them followed any known laws of science. He was studying these reports in his lab when a message arrived on his personal communicator. The signal was encrypted with codes he had never seen before, but somehow his computer decrypted it automatically. "Dr. Raxus," the message read, "you have been asking the right questions. If you want answers, come to these coordinates. Come alone. Bring no weapons. Tell no one." The coordinates pointed to a location in deep space, far from any star system. It was exactly the kind of place where someone might go to hide from the entire galaxy. Against his better judgment, Raxus took his personal research shuttle and followed the coordinates. 3 days later, he arrived at what appeared to be empty space, but as he approached the designated location, his sensors detected something impossible. A massive structure materialized around his ship. It was bigger than a planet, made of materials that didn't appear on any periodic table and older than any civilization Raxus knew about. "Welcome, Dr. Raxus," came a voice over his communication system. "Please dock at the indicated bay. Someone is waiting to meet you." The docking bay was huge, designed to accommodate ships much larger than his small shuttle. As he walked through the corridors, Raxus noticed that the station was almost empty. The few beings he saw were like nothing he had ever encountered. Tall, graceful creatures that seemed to be made of living starlight. He was led to a chamber where one of these beings waited for him. "I am Elder Observer Nethyal," the creature said. Its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We have been watching your investigation into the humans. You want to understand what they are?" "Yes," Raxus replied. "Nothing about them makes sense. They violate every law of physics and biology, but they don't even realize it. That is because they are not from your galaxy originally, Nethyal said. They are refugees from a war that ended before your species existed. The elder gestured, and the chamber around them changed. Suddenly, Raxus was standing in what appeared to be the center of the galaxy, watching events from millions of years ago. This was the first galactic civilization, Nethyal explained. The ancients, as you might call them. They built an empire that spanned not just one galaxy, but thousands. Their technology was beyond anything your current species can imagine. The hologram showed incredible cities floating in space, each one larger than star systems. Ships that could move faster than light without engines. Beings who had mastered the fundamental forces of reality itself. They thought they were invincible, Nethyal continued, until they encountered the convergence. The scene changed. Dark rifts appeared in space, and from them emerged things that hurt to look at. They weren't ships or creatures in any normal sense. They were holes in reality itself, places where existence simply stopped. The convergence exists in the spaces between dimensions, Nethyal explained. It feeds on order, structure, reality itself. When it enters a universe, everything simply ceases to exist, not destroyed, erased, as if it had never been. Raxus watched in horror as the magnificent ancient civilization was consumed. Entire star systems vanished without a trace. The beings that had seemed godlike were helpless against enemies that existed outside the rules of physics. The ancients realized they could not win this war, Nethyal said. So they created the Guardian Protocol. What's that? A species designed specifically to fight the convergence. Beings whose consciousness exists partially outside normal reality, making them capable of perceiving and combating dimensional threats. The hologram showed ancient scientists working frantically in massive laboratories. They were manipulating genetic codes, consciousness patterns, and fundamental forces that Raxus couldn't even name. They seeded this galaxy with sleeping Guardian. Bases, Nethyal continued. Then they took their new creations and hid them on a distant planet, far from any major civilization. They programmed them to develop naturally, to grow strong and adaptable, until the day they would be needed. The humans, Raxus breathed. Yes. Every impossible thing they do, every law they break, every miracle they perform, it was all designed. They are living weapons created to fight an enemy that exists beyond the normal universe. The scene shifted to show Earth in its early days. Raxus saw the ancients placing human ancestors on the world, then departing forever. He watched as humanity developed over millions of years, their impossible capabilities lying dormant. But they don't know any of this, Raxus said. Of course not. If they knew what they were created for, it would change how they developed. The Guardian Protocol required them to grow naturally, to become strong through facing challenges, not through being given power. Meanwhile, on Earth, archaeologist Sang-Min Oh was making a discovery that would change everything. He had been excavating what appeared to be a natural cave system in the mountains of Korea when his equipment detected artificial structures buried deep underground. Ji-Hai, you need to see this, he called to his colleague, historian Ji-Hai Bei. Ji-Hai joined him at the excavation site. What they had uncovered was clearly not natural. Smooth walls extended down into the earth, made of materials that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols covered the surfaces. How old do you think this is? Ji-Hai asked. The geological layers suggest it's been here for at least 10 million years, Sang-Min replied. But that's impossible. There was no advanced civilization on Earth back then. As they explored deeper, they found chambers filled with strange technology. The devices were clearly artificial, but they didn't look like anything humans had ever built. They were too organic, too flowing, as if they had been grown rather than constructed. Sang-Min, Ji-Hai called from another chamber. Come look at this. She was standing in front of a wall covered with symbols and images. But as Sang-Min approached, the symbols began to change. They rearranged themselves into Korean text. Welcome, Guardians, the wall now read. You have found the first cache. The awakening begins now. How is it doing that? Sang-Min asked. Before Ji-Hai could answer, the chamber filled with a soft humming sound. Devices that had been dormant for millions of years began to activate. Lights appeared along the walls, leading deeper into the structure. It's responding to us, Ji-Hai realized. This technology was designed for humans to find. At the Seoul Space Center, communications expert Hoon Seok Lim was having his own strange experience. His equipment had been detecting unusual signals from space, but they weren't coming from any known source. Worse, the signals seemed to be in perfect Korean. This is impossible, he muttered, checking his equipment for the 100th time. These signals are coming from deep space, but they're in our language. How can aliens be speaking Korean? As he analyzed the signals more carefully, he realized they weren't just in Korean. They were using concepts and grammar structures that humans had only developed in the last few decades. It was as if whoever was sending them had learned the language by watching human broadcasts. But the signals were clearly coming from sources that were moving faster than light, suggesting technology far beyond human capabilities. Back on the Observer Station, Dr. Raxus was learning the full truth about humanity's origin. The humans aren't just weapons, Nethiel explained. They're the key to a universal defense system. When the convergence awakens, Guardian bases throughout the galaxy will activate, but they can only be operated by human consciousness. Why humans specifically? Because they were designed to think in ways that can affect reality directly. When a human truly believes something is possible, they can make it possible. When they refuse to accept defeat, reality itself bends to accommodate their will. That's why they seem to break the laws of physics, Raxus realized. Physics is just a description of how reality normally works. Humans are designed to work abnormally when necessary. The Elder showed him more images from the ancient war. Raxus saw prototype humans fighting the convergence entities, somehow able to wound beings made of pure entropy. But why keep it secret? Raxus asked. Why not tell them what they are? Because knowledge changes behavior. If humans knew they were designed as weapons, they might become too careful, too strategic. The Guardian Protocol requires them to remain essentially human, curious, adaptable, irrepressibly optimistic about solving impossible problems. And now? Now the signals from Earth indicate that the dormant systems are awakening. The humans are beginning to find the ancient bases. Soon, they will start remembering what they were created for. Nethiel gestured, and the hologram showed current events across the galaxy. Human colonies were reporting strange dreams. Archaeological sites were uncovering impossible structures. Communications networks were detecting signals that seemed to be calling to them. The convergence is stirring again, Nethiel said gravely. After millions of years it has found this galaxy. The Guardian Protocol is activating because it senses the threat approaching. What happens now? Raxus asked. Now, We wait and see if the ancients were right. Can humanity become what they were designed to be? Can they save not just this galaxy, but all? The first rift opened in the Vega system without warning. One moment the star was shining normally. The next, reality simply tore apart like wet paper. Captain Veltar of the Altarian science vessel was conducting routine stellar observations when his instruments went insane. Every sensor screamed warnings about impossible readings, energy signatures that violated basic physics, gravitational patterns that made no sense. "What's happening?" he demanded of his science officer. "Sir, I don't know how to describe this. Space itself is breaking. There's a hole where the star used to be, but it's not empty. It's full of something that shouldn't exist." Through the viewing ports, the crew could see the rift. It looked like a wound in reality, bleeding darkness that hurt to look at. From within that darkness, shapes began to emerge. The convergence. Entities were nothing like the aliens of normal space. They had no fixed form, no consistent size, no describable features. They were concepts given shape: hunger, entropy, the complete absence of existence. When they moved, space around them simply stopped being. "Send a distress signal to the Galactic Council," Captain Veltar ordered. "Tell them the Vega system is under attack by unknown entities." But before the message could be sent, the communications array simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, erased. The concept of communication itself seemed to fail in the presence of these creatures. Within hours, the entire Vega system was gone. 8 planets, billions of inhabitants, a 1,000-year-old civilization, all erased as if they had never existed. The convergence entities moved on, leaving behind empty space that even light refused to enter. The pattern repeated across the galaxy. The Proxima colony vanished overnight. The great trading hub of Nexus Station simply stopped existing. Entire fleets sent to investigate the disappearances never reported back, because there was nothing left to report. In the Galactic Council chambers, panic was spreading faster than the disappearances. "How do we fight something we can't understand?" demanded General Nexvar. "Our weapons pass through them like they're not there." "Because they're not there, in any sense we understand," replied Chief Scientist Yulgeth. "These entities exist outside normal space-time. They're immune to physical attacks because they don't follow physical laws." Council leader Vexana studied the reports with growing dread. Every species that has encountered them has been completely destroyed. No survivors, no wreckage, no trace that they ever existed. "What about the humans?" asked Minister Yultalk. "They're supposed to be impossibly capable. Surely they can fight these things." "The humans don't even know this is happening," Vexana replied. "They're isolated in their corner of the galaxy. By the time the entities reach them, there may be no one left to warn them. But on the human colony of New Sol, something strange was happening." Farmer Hyunwoo Kim woke up from the most vivid dream of his life. In the dream, he had been standing in a vast chamber filled with technology beyond imagination. Ancient voices had been speaking to him in a language he didn't recognize, but somehow understood perfectly. "The Guardians must awaken," the voices had said. "The enemy has returned. Remember what you are." Hyunwoo shook his head and got out of bed. Just a dream, he told himself. But as he walked to his kitchen, he noticed something strange. His daughter, so young, was already awake, sitting at the table with a troubled expression. "Dad, I had the weirdest dream," she said. "There were these voices telling me that something bad was coming. They said humans were created to fight it." "You had the same dream?" Hyunwoo asked, feeling a chill. Across the galaxy, every human was having the same experience. Jinna Park woke up in her research station with complete knowledge of dimensional physics. Tae-ho Choi found himself understanding energy patterns he had never studied. Captain Woo Jin Lee felt an urgent need to prepare his ship for a battle he couldn't name. On Earth, archaeologist Sang-min Oh and historian Ji-hai Bei were working frantically in the underground chambers they had discovered. The ancient technology was fully active now, displaying information in perfect Korean that neither of them remembered learning. "Look at this," Ji-hai said, pointing to a three-dimensional display. "It's showing the entire galaxy, and there are red zones spreading across it." The display was updating in real time, showing the advance of the convergence. Systems were disappearing one by one, leaving behind voids that the display marked as null zones. "How are we seeing this?" Sang-min asked. "This technology has been buried for millions of years. How does it know what's happening right now?" "Because it's connected to a network," came a voice from behind them. They turned to see communications expert Hun Sok Lim entering the chamber. He looked exhausted but determined. "I've been tracking the signals," he explained. "They're coming from installations all over Earth, buried facilities that are all activating at the same time. They're part of some kind of planetary defense system." "Defense? Against what?" Ji-hai asked. The display answered her question by showing recordings from the disappeared systems. They watched in horror as entire worlds simply stopped existing. "Those things," Hun Sok said quietly, "are what's coming. And according to these signals, humans are the only species that can fight them." Meanwhile, at Fort Hanyang, soldiers, Byung-ho Kang and Se-rom, were experiencing their own awakening. Military equipment that had been standard issue suddenly seemed primitive to them. They found themselves modifying weapons and vehicles without conscious thought, turning ordinary military hardware into devices that operated beyond known physics. "Se-rom, look at what I did to this rifle," Byung-ho said, holding up a weapon that was glowing with internal energy. "I don't remember changing it, but somehow I know exactly how it works now." "Same here," Se-rom replied, gesturing to a communications device that was displaying tactical information from across the galaxy. "I'm getting reports from human colonies everywhere. Everyone's having the same experience." The reports were troubling. Humans throughout the galaxy were spontaneously developing abilities they had never possessed. Farmers were understanding advanced technology. Children were solving mathematical equations that baffled alien scientists. Ordinary civilians were preparing for a war they couldn't consciously remember. On New Seoul, the colonists gathered in the town center as the reality of their situation became clear. The ancient voices in their dreams had been right. Something terrible was coming, and somehow humans were the galaxy's only hope against it. "I know this sounds crazy," Hyun-woo said to the assembled crowd, "but I think we need to prepare for battle. Not against other people, but against something that wants to destroy everything that exists." "How do we fight something like that?" asked Merchant Kyung-soo-an. "The same way we've always fought impossible problems," replied teacher Narration. "We figure it out as we go." The first test came sooner than expected. A convergence entity, drawn by the active Guardian signals, materialized at the edge of the New Sol system. It was smaller than the ones that had destroyed entire star systems, but still larger than most planets. Every human in the colony felt its presence like a cold weight on their souls. This wasn't just an enemy. It was the complete absence of everything they valued about existence. "There," So Young said, pointing at empty space that somehow felt wrong. "It's there." "I can feel it too," her father replied. "It's like a hole in the universe." What happened next defied every law of physics the galaxy knew. Without ships, without weapons, without any technology except their own impossible nature, the humans of New Sol reached out with their consciousness and touched the convergence entity. The creature recoiled. For the first time in millions of years, something had not only perceived it, but actually caused it pain. "It's afraid," Nara said with wonder in her voice. "It's actually afraid of us." The entity tried to erase the colony, to make it cease existing, but the humans simply refused to stop existing. Their collective will, their stubborn insistence on continuing to be real, created a barrier that the convergence could not break. "How are we doing this?" Kyung-soo asked. "Because we're human," Hyun-woo replied. "And humans don't know when to quit." The battle between the colony and the entity raged for hours. Reality twisted and bent as the convergence tried to unmake existence itself, while the humans pushed back with nothing but their refusal to accept impossibility. Finally, the entity retreated. It fled back to whatever dimension it had come from, wounded by contact with beings whose existence it could not erase. As news of the victory spread to other human colonies, a new understanding began to emerge. The ancient voices in their dreams had been telling the truth. Humans were not just another species. They were guardians, created specifically to fight enemies that existed beyond normal reality. But the victory at New Sol was just the beginning. Across the galaxy, larger and more powerful convergence entities were awakening. The full invasion was about to begin, and humanity would have to choose. Remain. The awakening came all at once, like a switch being flipped in the collective human consciousness. Across the galaxy, millions of humans suddenly remembered what they were. On Earth, archaeologist Sang-Min Oh stood in the ancient chamber as the final pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. The technology around him wasn't just displaying information. It was connecting him to every other human alive. He could feel their minds, their determination, their absolute refusal to let existence itself be destroyed. "We're not just weapons," he said to historian Ji-Hai Bei, who was experiencing the same revelation. "We're the immune system of reality itself." Ji-Hai nodded, her eyes reflecting knowledge that had been buried for millions of years. The ancients didn't just create us to fight the convergence. They made us to be guardians of existence, not just this galaxy, but all of space and time. The chamber around them transformed. Walls that had seemed solid became transparent, revealing the true scope of the ancient installation. It wasn't just a building, it was a vast machine that extended deep into Earth's core, connecting to similar installations across the planet. Earth itself was a guardian base, designed to coordinate human consciousness across infinite distances. Meanwhile, communications expert Hoon Seok Lim felt the network coming online. His equipment was no longer just receiving signals. It was part of a vast communication system that connected every human mind in the galaxy. Through it, he could sense the locations of guardian bases on thousands of worlds, most of them operated by species that had gone extinct millions of years ago. Only humans can operate them now, he realized, speaking to the vast network rather than to anyone physically present. We're the only consciousness pattern that can interface with ancient technology. Across the galaxy, the transformation accelerated. On New Sol, farmer Hyun-woo Kim felt his perception expanding beyond anything he had thought possible. He could see the convergence entities as they truly were, wounds in reality itself, places where the fundamental forces that held existence together had been torn apart. "They're not evil," he told his daughter, so young, who was experiencing the same expansion of understanding. "They're just hungry. They consume order, structure, the very concept of being itself. In their dimension, existence is food." So young, now functioning as part of the human collective consciousness while still maintaining her individual identity, nodded grimly. "And we're the antibodies. We exist in a way that makes us immune to their hunger." The battle began in earnest when the largest convergence entity yet encountered materialized near the galactic core. It was the size of a solar system, a massive tear in reality that began consuming space itself. Entire star clusters simply stopped existing as it approached. But now, humanity was ready. Captain Wu Jin Lee felt his ship, the UES Harmony, transform around him. The vessel had always been more than it appeared. Ancient technology disguised as human engineering. Now it revealed its true nature, becoming a weapon designed to operate in dimensions beyond normal space. "All human vessels, this is Captain Lee," he broadcast on frequencies that didn't exist in normal physics. "Guardian Protocol is active. Form up for dimensional combat." Across the galaxy, human ships that had seemed ordinary revealed themselves as Guardian vessels. Cargo haulers became reality anchors. Scientific research ships transformed into dimensional cannons. Even small personal shuttles reconfigured themselves into fighters capable of engaging entities that existed outside normal. Space-time engineer Minho Song found himself understanding technology that violated every law of physics he had ever learned. His hands moved across controls that manipulated the fundamental forces of reality, adjusting the quantum structure of space itself to create weapons that could wound concepts. Convergence entities feed on the collapse of ordered systems, he explained to Medical Officer Yunji Seo as they worked together to prepare their ship for battle. "So we need to create super-ordered systems. Reality so structured and organized that it becomes toxic to them." Yunji, whose medical knowledge now extended to the treatment of reality itself, nodded as she prepared healing fields that could repair damaged space-time. "We're not just fighting for our lives, we're fighting for the right of existence to continue existing." The final battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It wasn't fought with conventional weapons or in normal space. Instead, it was a war of consciousness against entropy, order against chaos, the human refusal to surrender against the universe's tendency toward dissolution. On New Sol, teacher Narration led her students, children who now wielded powers that would have been called godlike by any other species, in a coordinated effort to reinforce reality's foundations. They weren't just preventing the convergence from consuming their world, they were actively strengthening the barriers between dimensions. "Remember," she told 6-year-old Min Jun as he casually repaired a tear in space-time, "we're not destroying the convergence. We're teaching it that this universe is off-limits." Merchant Kyung-Soo An found his trader's instincts perfectly suited to logistics on a cosmic scale. He coordinated the movement of guardian forces across multiple dimensions, ensuring that every human consciousness was connected to the vast network of resistance. "It's like running a very large business," he explained to anyone who would listen. "Supply, demand, resource allocation. The convergence wants to consume reality, but we're making reality too expensive for them to afford." At Fort Hanyang, soldiers, Byung-ho Kang and Se Rom, led human military forces in battles that took place in conceptual space. They fought enemy entities made of pure entropy with weapons powered by human determination. The trick, Byung-ho discovered, is not to think of them as unbeatable. They're just another tactical problem. And humans are really good at solving tactical problems. Se-Rom, commanding a squad of soldiers who could walk through dimensions like corridors, added, "Plus, they've never faced an enemy that gets more stubborn the harder things get. That's our secret weapon. We're too ornery to quit." The turning point came when the humans realized they didn't need to defeat the convergence. They needed to communicate with it. Jinna Park, using her deep-sea research experience to navigate the crushing depths of interdimensional space, made first contact with the entities controlling intelligence. "You're starving," she said to the vast consciousness that directed the convergent swarms. "Your dimension is running out of things to consume. But this isn't the answer. The convergence intelligence, ancient beyond measure and driven by endless hunger, paused in its assault. For the first time in eons, something was speaking to it rather than simply trying to destroy it. "We can teach you how to create instead of consume," Taeho Choi added, his engineering mind working on problems of cosmic scope. "Reality can be grown, not just harvested. You don't have to destroy entire universes to feed." What followed was not the destruction of the convergence, but its education. Humans, with their impossible ability to make the unworkable work, taught entities of pure entropy how to generate order instead of consuming it. They showed beings that existed to unmake reality how to create new realities instead. The process took subjective eons but only moments in normal time. When it was finished, the convergence entities retreated to their own dimension, not in defeat, but in understanding. They had learned to feed on the creation of new possibilities rather than the destruction of existing ones. As the dimensional rifts closed and reality stabilized, the galaxy emerged from the crisis forever changed. The human colonies found themselves hosting refugees from dozens of species whose worlds had been restored when the convergence reversed its consumption. Dr. Raxus, watching the aftermath from his research vessel, finally understood what he had been observing all along. "They're not just guardians," he told his crew. "They're teachers. They don't just protect reality. They help it grow." On Earth, Captain Woo Jin Lee accepted a new position as humanity's first official Guardian coordinator. The ancient bases remained active, monitoring the dimensional barriers and ensuring that threats like the convergence would be detected early. "The off-limits law stays in effect," he announced to the reformed Galactic Council. "Not because we're dangerous to you, but because we have responsibilities you can't help us with. When reality needs defending, humans will be there. But in return, we ask only to be left in peace to live our impossible lives." The galaxy agreed, with a new understanding of what the law meant. Humans weren't off-limits because they were feared. They were off-limits because they were precious. They were the universe's insurance policy against cosmic-scale threats, and their protection was everyone's responsibility. Farmer Hyunwoo Kim returned to his fields on New Seoul, but now he tended crops that grew in soil enriched with cosmic awareness. His daughter So Young played with other children, games that looked simple but actually helped maintain the fundamental forces holding reality together. Teacher Narration went back to her classroom, where she taught 6-year-olds to read and write and, incidentally, to perform miracles. Myrrh.